So our final panel for today will be moderated by Alistair McElligott. Alistair is the founder and CEO of Entsia, a software provider revolutionising how insurers distribute products and manage policies and claims. Alistair will be joined by Sonya Crosby, Chief Data and Analytics Officer at QBE, Sahil Tulsiani, Chief Information Officer at Envest, and Graeme Wilson, Chief Information Officer at Hollard. Together, they will deep dive into how CIOs buy and the question between buy versus build.
Nice to meet you. Get some of this as well.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Today, we are lucky to have three key technology decision makers from three of the largest insurance brands in the country join our panel for the final session today. As they know, success for insurtechs isn't just about having great technology, it's also about working effectively with insurers. What do CIOs look for when choosing an insurtech partner? How can startups navigate the complexities of working with large, generally risk-averse customers? And how do you make such partnerships effective? Our panelists are going to share their experiences on the black art of building these successful partnerships between insurtechs and insurers. So I'll start by asking each panel member to give a brief introduction of their role and talk about how they're working with insurtechs today. Sonya?
Hi, everyone. So as the CDAO at AusPac for QBE, I work really closely with our ventures arm. So one of the key things we want to do is make sure that we're working with insurtech on real problems. And so starting with how do we engage internally to identify those problems, but also ventures are doing the market scan to say sort of what's happening out there in the environment. So we take that combination of the challenges and the opportunities that we're seeing, look to the ventures team to scan the market, identify opportunities, and then work through that process of investment. And identification or proof of concept, then it comes back into me to make it real. That's where the rubber hits the road in terms of taking and operationalising new opportunities, because it's one thing to have a great idea, but it's another thing to actually implement and scale it out successfully. So you could see me at the beginning of it and also at the end of it. And one of the insurtechs, just as an example, we've been in partnership with Nearmaps for some time in terms of imagery and property intelligence. And I call it a partnership because it started as working together to develop a product and then taking that into test and learn environment and then scaling it out. And you need that executive sponsorship to make sure that you can do that latter end. So we're very fortunate to have that arm, but actually it's how this works together where you get the success.
Thanks. Graeme?
I think, first of all, never get your photo taken during Movember. It will haunt you for life. So, as the CIO of Hollard, I run technology. And really, from a business engagement perspective, we work with our business to try and find out what is their key problems, how can we solve them, and then we have to go to the crux of the discussion today is whether we buy or whether we build that. And really that's around getting the solutions or understanding what the solutions are out in the marketplace, understanding where we can go to market to buy versus where we want to build. If you look at Hollard, Hollard has a history of investing. Some of these into insurtechs. Use a couple from an example perspective. We have Grappler. It's kind of key to some of our financial processes. And as Alistair knows, we have Entsia, and it's kind of key to one of our policy administration systems. So it's we like to support insurtechs, and we like to use them in different places across our value chain.
Sahil.
Hi everyone, I'm Sahil, CIO at Envest. I've been with Envest 4 years now. It's been a really exciting journey. A busy one, but exciting one. I thought I might just provide some background on Envest because we're sort of pretty much new kids on the block in a way compared to some of the other insurers. So Envest started off about 7 years ago, more as an investment company, but it's quickly sort of evolved to become one of Australia's largest insurance distribution platforms. So just last year alone, we put through about $3.6 billion in GWP across the group. That's across broking, underwriting agencies, and our authorized rep network. And in terms of insurtechs that we work with, we actually work with a lot of the InsurtechLIVE Australia partners. So we obviously work with Entsia. Some of our agencies use their platform for policy and claims. We work with Grappler as well. They help us automate credit control and trust accounting. We work with E5 for workflow. Like Louise, she's a really good salesperson, I'd say. We work on the broking side. We use Zap Central. We work with the Javelin team. We also have the Blue Leopard platform as part of the group. So, yeah, quite a few in the ecosystem there.
Okay, great. So kick off, Sonya, with maybe this impactful question of, what does an insurtech really need to demonstrate to get your attention?
Great question. One of the things, and this goes to traditional vendors as well, is we tend to have a whole lot of stuff coming at you, but it's not necessarily solving a real problem, or it might be just I'm trying to solve all of your problems for you. So what we're really looking for is that specialist capability that we don't have ourselves. And an example of that would be like we're good at insurance, right? But we're not good at geospatial. So we would partner to bring that capability in to help us go faster. So really, really clear articulation of a problem and a specialist capability that is also big enough to scale. So sometimes you're solving a really little problem where, in the corporate side, we're looking at that going, it's not really our number one priority right now. So being able to identify those problems that have what I would call menace, where you're going to get sponsorship because it's actually a problem that many people share that you can solve for, that is a specialist capability that can scale. So if you think about that and you think about the example of geospatial, that's bringing a piece that we don't have. It's bringing a tech advantage to us that's made a meaningful difference. It actually started in our claims area, but the super users were the underwriters. Because when you think about having that quality of information at your fingertips, you can start to get to more granular and better and more accurate and faster pricing. It also helps us speed up our claims process. So there's two big problems were solved with one technology. But you had to identify that and bring that in first.
Okay, great. Sahil, if you could have one problem solved for you tomorrow by an insurtech, what would it be?
Just one problem.
Just one, yeah.
Okay, so I guess I'll go with this one because it's front of mind for me. I would say access to reliable data sources that can specifically help us reduce the number of questions we need to ask as part of the code journey. And again, we were recently just working on a project where we're trying to sort of streamline the number of, redesigning the quote lines for this is a direct-to-consumer motor product, and we're trying to streamline the quote lines there and trying to sort of reduce the number of questions that we need to ask. But despite best efforts in the product team, we still ended up with over 50 questions. That's from starting the quote to bind. So, and even like we sort of got the time frame down as well. So still sitting at about after 30% reduction, we're still sitting at about 10 minutes on average to complete a quote. So I think anything that we can do in that space, even on the broking side, we obviously have proposal forms that go on for pages that we need customers to complete. So anything we can do in that area to try and reduce the number of questions or pre-populate questions, I think will help. We do have some structured data sources that have been around for a long time, which I think quite widely the industry uses. But I haven't really seen any good developments in that area recently. And I'm hoping now with have to bring some AI component in, right? So with LLMs and NLPs, we can sort of maybe tap more unstructured data, look at things like from websites and publicly available information as well as imagery and other ways. So I'd say if someone has a solution around reducing that friction there from a customer perspective, I think we'll be ready to sign up tomorrow.
Okay, because I suppose those third-party data sources haven't really evolved massively over the last few years.
I think we've seen in the stuff in the underwriting and pricing space, but not so much in terms of I guess, reducing the number of questions we need to ask.
Yeah.
Slightly.
Okay. All right. Graeme, you touched on this in your introduction. How do you decide between a build versus buy, where you maybe typically build it, or there's not a product in the market, then an insurtech comes along with a solution that you could buy? What's the build versus buy process that you go through it?
Yeah, I mean, so our strategy at Hollard is kind of built around a buy and configure or integrate kind of strategy. You know, we're looking at putting in modern claims administration system, policy administration system, contact center systems, all in the cloud. So when it comes down to the build versus buy decision, we look at will it be a differentiator in the market? Do we have the capability to build it internally? Is there a time mover? So can we get to market quicker? And do we want to retain some IP, right? So that's our kind of key areas that we look at. And based on the mix of that, then we'll work out whether we want to go to market and try and find a solution, especially if there's solutions out there that we can kind of plug and play into our ecosystem. Then that's for me is a win-win, right? For us to get to market quicker and start to deliver value for our customers.
Do you find any natural tension within IT who may have a tendency to want to build in-house, just given the background of your engineers and dev teams?
I mean, I think engineers always want to build stuff, don't they? I mean, that's their bread and butter. But I think what we got to do is focus them on the right stuff, right? So even though we're buying certain capability here, that allows them to go and build different capabilities. So it's not you don't build if we buy. It's about working out what the right mix is for us to get to market effectively.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll jump back to you, Sahil. What's a good sign of a mature insurtech with regards to risk and compliance? And how can insurtechs try and navigate the complexities of being compliant in 2025 in the Australian market?
I mean, risk and compliance has to be my favorite topic, right? Yeah, so I think some of the signs we see from a mature insurtech, right? So definitely a few things come to mind. So things like security frameworks. We find that when we're dealing with mature insurtechs, they're generally more aligned towards like one of the security frameworks, whether that's NIST or CIS or SOC 2. Or they usually sort of look at getting certified, and they have some sort of ISO certification, ISO 27001. I think the second thing I would say would be alignment with regulatory sort of requirements, or just understanding of that. So things like CPS 234, CPS 230. And although we are not APRA regulated, our insurers, Australian-based insurers, do require us to comply. So I think when an insurtech comes in, they sort of are familiar with the requirements that makes our life easier. And lastly, I think when you talk about contract negotiations, I think the more mature insurtechs generally are more prepared for the process, whereas we find some of the most startup new insurtechs generally find that process quite daunting, and because it can be really time consuming and get expensive really quickly.
Yeah, okay. I think the first time we went through it, we had to bring in a KPMG or someone to help us get out the other side, but it gets easier.
Yeah.
Okay, are we going to take questions from the audience? So I'll just get onto the next question, and then we'll look at whether we've got any questions coming in through Slido, so please send them through. I'll jump to Sonya. There's often a big cultural difference between a large insurer and an early stage startup. How do you go about engaging effectively across the cultural divide and like you said, maintaining that relationship over many years?
Yeah. Actually, I really asked for this question because back in New Zealand, you can probably tell from my accent, I'm one of the talent that jumped across the ditch as soon as I got the opportunity. We had this role in New Zealand which was around entrepreneurial spirit of New Zealand, making New Zealand go better through our startup community being healthy and supported. And there was this concept of this massive cultural divide between that big old corporate and the startup community. And so we had a group of corporates representing about 18% of New Zealand's GDP, which is your biggest airlines, telcos, banks, dairy and all the rest of it, came together with a group of startups from various different angles And the job to do was to understand the cultural difference between us. And we came up with a few things. One was, from the startup side, time poor, time is money. Don't have any money, don't buy coffee. Have a lot of personal risk associated with the startup, right? So you're on the line for your staff, for the investment that you're making. Your meetings after meetings after meetings drive you insane because you need to get to the decision fast so that you can actually get your customer profile up, get the credibility and scale your business out to win. On the corporate side, very, very time poor, wading through treacle, trying to get anything done, budget constrained, a lot of a laundry list of kind of your BAU to do without even thinking about what's new and how you could be smarter about it. You're just sort of drowning in the today. And then there's a lot of career risk associated with backing something new. So you have to really believe in it, and you have to have that executive belief to be able to really stand behind and commit to bringing something new into your business. And there's a lot of bureaucracy and navigation to actually sell inside the business, to be able to grow your business, grow your people, grow your company. And so when you sort of looked at it, you went, actually, it's really about understanding that we have the same problems in different ways. And so what are the things we could do? So we created this blueprint, which we called like the dating app for startups and corporates. And with it is really thinking about how do you firstly validate that common problem, because that's key. Secondly, how do you find that executive sponsorship so that you're not spending all your time navigating or going to loads of meetings that you can't afford to spend the time doing, and neither can actually the corporate for that matter. And then instead of doing heavy RFP processes, how do you lean canvas out and just make sure that you've actually thought about all the things you need to be able to do. So that created kind of a blueprint which we gifted into Small Business New Zealand. I think, there's a lot in common here, and there's a lot of opportunity for us to start thinking in this way, because we can be frustrated with each other or we can actually understand each other, and from that understanding we can just get much, much better at what we're doing.
Okay, it's interesting. And Graeme, you mentioned Hollard as investor in InsurtechLIVE.
Yep.
How do you bridge that cultural divide with the InsurtechLIVE that you have equity in?
Well, that's always challenging. There's kind of a bit of way both ways. Look, for us, when we're working with them, it's about understanding how they work best, right? So not trying to mold them into the way that we work, because we can be quite clunky, and that doesn't necessarily work well. We had an engagement recently where it went off the rails because the InsurtechLIVE was keen to please and tried to do it the way that we would normally do it, and that ended up in a little bit of a failure moment that we had to pivot and push the right way, which was the way that they wanted to do it in the first place. So I think it's about really keenly defining the ways of working, making sure that's effective, but balancing that, obviously, if we have an investment in an InsurtechLIVE, that becomes different because you can kind of cut them a little bit more slack because you've got upside on the other side of the equation.
And you've got board seats and things.
And you've got board seats to deal with.
Keep an eye on things. Okay. Graeme, maybe I'll stick with you. Maybe you could describe sort of at a higher level the areas that you feel InsurtechLIVE can have the biggest impact versus the least in terms of the whole insurance value chain. Where do you think, how do you sort of summarize biggest impact and lowest impact?
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, we've kind of nailed from a strategy perspective what we want to do at the core. So really we see InsurtechLIVE adding value on top of that, right? So it's how can they plug into our ecosystem that we have, plugging into Guidewire or Duck Creek and getting that ecosystem effective. So it's really solving key business problems that kind of operate outside of the core areas for us is where we would see. Visualization is a great one. Data and AI is another great one. It's really about how do we bolt on to what we currently do to get value.
Okay, great. So I'm going to ask each of you this question, maybe starting with Sahil.
Sure.
Can you give us an example, and Graeme, you touched on this already, can you give us an example of where you've worked with an InsurtechLIVE and it's been a failure and you've learned something from that experience?
Yeah, I guess
You don't have to name names.
So I guess, yeah, we have unfortunately had that experience, but I think generally at Envest, I don't think we're afraid to fail. It's more about how you recover from that and make sure that you don't repeat that mistake again. But I guess in this particular example, I think a lot of it just came down to like scalability issues. So scalability, I guess, in two parts. So one was just the platform itself, and I think like when we went through the RFP process initially, doing on paper the solution design was all great. Went through POC, everything's fine. But then when we started hitting some serious production workloads, we found that scalability was a problem, and then you sort of start to lose confidence from the business users and things like that, and it's a bit hard to recover from that. And the other aspect was also the scalability on the delivery side. I think we started off. The plan was originally for a small business unit, and then it sort of became bigger and bigger. And then I think there was a challenge. There was a struggle to be able to scale on that side.
Okay, Graeme?
I think you touched upon loss of confidence is key, right, in the engagement with InsurTech. Cast my mind back a few years ago, we had engagement with InsurTech, and they came in to solve a really unique little problem for our business. And then they started to talk to a lot of our business stakeholders and found they had lots of little unique problems to solve. And then they just started to try and solve those on the fly. That ended in tears. So I think the key thing is to keep laser focused on where your value prop is. Make sure that you keep the confidence through that. Drive that outcome. And then go away and solve the problem and come back again and resell, but don't try and sell everything. You can make many trips to the well. You don't have to get it all at once.
Okay. Sonya?
Yeah, RAP, the RFP. I failed completely in a RFP process where previously I was in the entertainment business, and I was trying to get a mixed reality of a mower running down Federal Street in Auckland, because I thought this is going to be the duck's nuts for tourism. It's going to be really good. So I put this RFP together, sent it out, because there's a whole lot of really talented startups in New Zealand that work actually mainly offshore, do a lot of work for Disney in various places. Anyway, I thought, fantastic, sent it out. Firstly, I didn't get too many back because, as you know, RFPs are very hard to do and they take time and cost money. And then I got a whole lot of really different ones back. So there was a camera specialist, there was a storytelling specialist, there were various different capabilities. And I realised I'd completely failed in what I was actually trying to do and trying to find a one-size-fits-all solve my problem for me. So I rang everyone up and apologised and said, look, that was a disaster, really bad idea. We're going to start again, and I want you to bring your specialist capability to the table with these 5 other companies, and let's see if we can problem solve it together, which then became a creative lab for solving problems. It was about getting the right specialist capabilities in the room and giving them the freedom and actually paying them to solve the problem, not saying, I'll pay you once you've solved my problem for me, which is generally what an RFP does. So I learned a lot out of kind of how do you really partner up and make sure that you're not just following a business process that's very corporate-y, that just doesn't fit the problem that you're trying to solve.
Yeah, okay, great. We'll switch to a couple of questions from the audience, so thank you for submitting these. Maybe you can jump in, anyone on the panel. See, there's one of these for you, Sonya. We'll come to that one. The others are open. So this is a really great one, I think, just given my own experiences, is given the insurance industry is often only one degree of separation, how much do you rely on your network when making purchasing decisions?
I mean, I think for me, and it kind of touches on how to get in contact. If I can get a referral, it's much better, right? Yeah. So getting a referral of someone I know, someone I've dealt with before, getting key information out of my peers around what they're doing, obviously with the relevant legal points in there, but getting a view on what's happening in certain companies and how they're using InsurTech is much better than the random call.
Yeah. Okay. I build on that because I actually think it's really important that we need to know the truth, because you can work with the truth of what you need. And often when you're selling it, you tend to go, yeah, we're all good, sweet. And actually it's an idea that's not quite fully formed yet. So being able to talk to others who are working with you and have that open door to see how it's really going, that gives that authentic kind of understanding. of where you're really at. And you want to be successful. We all want to be successful. So if we can have that kind of sharing going on, it really helps us.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know, but from my perspective, we now have a head of procurement, right? So I guess all of that now sort of is out of our remit here. But yeah, I think, I think like Graeme was saying earlier, referrals, it's good to sort of have that to sort of, have open doors, but I think we still go through a pretty thorough RFP process now, run by procurement.
Okay, we've got a claims question here. So the question is, what is your number one claims pain point in 2025? I want to jump in from a claims perspective.
I need a claims person in the room, but I'm sure there's plenty of them. The key for me is actually how do you speed to decision in the right way, because certainty is really important. And there are so many things that you need to know in order to be able to help that decision. And so the more that we can actually close the gap between, firstly, realising that there's a moment where you're needed, and then what are all the things that we have to solve for to get to a decision, and how fast can we go to get there? The faster you can get to certainty, the better.
Yep. Okay. There's another question specifically for you, Sonya, and QBE. Someone's targeting QBE here.
In a good way.
What are the biggest challenges within data and analytics in this ever-changing market for QBE in the next year or two?
What are the challenges? We're sort of halfway through quite a big modernisation, and I say modernisation because it's not a start and a stop. It's never going to end. But it just becomes our new normal. So we've had to we've invested in being able to have the tools to bring better data faster to support decisioning and to drive it. I think what we'll find is that we need to augment that a lot more. We have capability in-house. We have very good, we're already in the Gen AI space. We've been running good ML and AI for a number of years. But I think what we'll find is what are the things we don't know? And how can we use other and new information to help us to get to decisions quicker, both in terms of quality of pricing, solving for some of the harder problems, like what about affordability? What kinds of information and support might help us to support people better, whether that's our staff or our customers. I think it's where, for example, could you price better if you knew from an image what the building material's made of, and you can connect that to the supply chain to get the claim in quicker. So we don't have necessarily that information, because Aisha was just talking to one of the insurtechs before about we tend to focus on getting that information at claim, but what about getting it earlier? And then you can get a better conversation going earlier, and then therefore you have information that helps you all the way through the life cycle. That sort of thing. Okay,
I hope that was a good answer for the very specific question. Another one here, does the Australian insurtech ecosystem provide enough to solve your problems, or do you find yourselves looking to bring something in from abroad that might not have been used in Australia before?
I think from my perspective, we nearly always look for a proof point in region. So it's really hard to go and pick something from abroad and get it into region and make it work. Even just from a data storage perspective, you have to overcome those barriers. So the answer for me is, our first look is within Australia, and then if we don't have anything there, then we might well look outside, but hardly ever.
Yeah, so pretty reasonably complete ecosystem, you'd say, as a panel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So another one here is, do you ever have the lure of copying an insurtech in-house? Do you go to the pitch sessions for the purposes of taking the ideas back to your IT teams?
This one's for you, Graeme. It's about tinkering with out-of-the-box stuff.
Yeah, this is not being recorded, so...
I mean, I just don't think it's worth our while, to be honest. I mean, it's great to see what's happening, but I'd rather buy it. To be honest, I don't see any value in reinventing the wheel. Now, what we might do is have a chat about how they can configure it slightly differently to meet a specific need that we have. But from my perspective, I never go and think about how can I rebuild this thing
Agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, okay, everyone's on.
If I had that spare time, that'd be fantastic.
We don't have the time. We don't have the time, and we need to move faster. And we also need that different perspective. So I wouldn't be worried about your IP. I think you just got to be able to bring it and articulate it.
Yeah, okay, great. So we're getting down to the final few minutes. So I'm going to ask you all one final question to wrap up, maybe the most important question. Well, there's two parts to it. Will you be attending the drinks afterwards? And then more broadly, what's the best way for an InsurTech to get in touch with you, to have a meaningful conversation? I can imagine you get bombarded by emails, calls, LinkedIn requests, you name it. So if someone's listened to what you've said today and wants to have that conversation with you, how do they go about it?
Yes, I will attend the drinks this evening. Yes, we have Ventures team members in the room, so I could ask them to stand up. If you have a look for James, Lynn, Alex and Matthias, there's 4 of them here today. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. And also you can also go to ventures at qbe.com. Suggest you have a little look at their blogs and some of their webinars and things like that, because it gives you a really good idea about what they're looking for. And getting to validate the business problem is pretty key. So, but I'm sure that they're waived, so that's a good thing. To, just ask the question, just say, look, this is the space that I'm in. Where are you at? What are you looking for? Is there a match? And then you can take it meaningfully forward.
Okay, great. Graeme?
Yes, I will be attending the drinks because I'm Scottish. In terms of engagement, we don't have a ventures team. I'd love to have James and a team to kind of turn to solve these problems. So really, in terms of connectivity, as I touched upon, getting a referral in is probably the easiest way. My EA does a fantastic job so that I don't see many emails that are random that come through. LinkedIn is pretty painful in terms of really trying to get the right view. So if you do pitch in, it really needs to be solving a business problem. It needs to be clearly articulated. That might catch my attention.
Preferably from someone that you know.
Preferably someone that I know, or a referral, or just a reference to someone I know.
Okay, great. And Sahil?
I will be hanging around after this. But maybe I'll say, for me, actually, LinkedIn works quite well. Do try and sort of take out time, maybe a couple of times a month to meet non-existing vendors and just sort of have a chat, see what else is out there. But so happy for someone to reach out on LinkedIn. It's fine.
Okay, so you're effectively the Envest Ventures team.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Till I bring in the procurement team.
Yeah, okay, well that's fantastic. Well, there's plenty of people to talk to tonight, the panelists and the QBE Ventures team who are actually paying for drinks or hosting drinks, I believe, which is fantastic. So that's all I've got time for. So I want to thank you, Sonya, Graeme and Sahil, for your insights and the audience for your questions. Could we give the panelists a round of applause, please?
Thank you.